Testing. Hello, Ira. How the hell are you?
It's all right, huh?
Testing, testing.
You don't have to stay up. I'll do that when I don't.
Okay.
I'll do that.
Okay.
Let me just get a cigarette, John. John Gallagher could probably be a relative of yours. He was a coach at Scranton Prep basketball team. Check. Great coach. Big, tall guy. About 6'3". Died about 3 years ago.
So he would have coached in the 50s?
50s and mid-60s. Real good.
Ira, I need 2 minutes. Yep.
Well, my grandfather, his family, of course, you know, stayed, and to this day, is up in Scranton. He left in 1921. Him and his brother Bill came to New York City, and he met Nellie Cavallo, born in Naples. Met her on the Lower West Side, and they got married in 1925, and it was like interracial marriage.
Oh, yeah.
Families did not talk for 15 years.
That's it. Now you got it. Yeah. Well, that's what, you know, in some of the dialogue texture in championship season, I tried to get that ethnic mix. One got Polish, one got Irish. Yeah. You Dago, you Shanty Irish. Yeah. So, I mean, it's not a bigotry there.
Oh, no.
It's a way of life. I mean, if
I was just setting a couple
if the guy was running against them was an Arab, they'd call him a goddamn Arab.
Exactly. You know, that's like the Scorsese films. You know, you see Mean Streets or you know, or Taxi Driver. It's the same kind of thing. I mean,
Okay, I'm ready.
It's a formal identification. It's not a codified bigotry.
Yeah.
You know? And up there is, you know, the patch was Old Forge is all Italian. Dixon City's all Polish. Scranton's got Polish, Welsh, Italian. And I went to St. Patrick's High School, and half the school was Lebanese. And that was in 1950. Huh. Lebanese are very strong up there. You know, they run all the fruit. Yeah, they run all the fruit and produce.
What's that?
He used to talk about Christy Mathewson, you know, the local.
Oh, yeah, he's from Factoryville.
Right.
Yeah, but there's a lot of great sports figures. Charlie Trippi.
Right.
This kid Cephalo now from Miami.
That's nice.
Munchak for Houston. It's a great sports area.
Yeah.
Of course, that's all they have. Great boxing area, too.
Go ahead, John.
Okay.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, Jason, it's been a 10-year odyssey for you in bringing that championship season from stage to screen. Could you talk a little bit about that time?
Yeah, it's about, I'd say, between 7 and 10. The first screenplay I did was in 1975. And it has been a kind of an epic journey. It fell apart many times due to the death of William Holden, the catastrophe of a few directors dropping out of the picture, and the pervasive attitude in Hollywood. And it would have to be opened up in the sense that the women would have to play an important part in the film. And I didn't think they had to. I wanted 5 men in male bonding, one night, slice of life. And abstract from that what you will. But I felt that if I started to get into the town, and into the wives, and into the girlfriends, at that time, I don't think my talent would have carried it beyond a road company Peyton place. So I wanted to keep the initial impulse and integrity of it without filming a stage play. Make it a film. There was a problem on where it should be filmed. I could have had it filmed with Columbia and David Beagleman in 1977, 76, but they wanted to film it in California, and I didn't think that was right. I didn't think Pasadena was the proper environment, atmospherically, mood, organically for a championship season. I wanted to show a town that was passing, perhaps, into oblivion. Not a town like Pasadena, which is a museum almost. You know, it's permanent and it's solid. And so Canon Films, Menachem Golan, Ewan Globus, saw the play in Tel Aviv in Hebrew about 2 years ago, and it was a huge, huge hit in Tel Aviv, and they brought me all the reviews in Hebrew and translated them. And they were very impressed by it, and they had none of the demands that the Hollywood studios had, none. They said, 5 men, you want to do it on the East Coast and the West Coast studio, and your live material, when you open it up in Scranton, fine. And so they once they committed, with, I suppose, typical Israeli alacrity, they went right to it. And we filmed we had 1 week rehearsal, 7 weeks of shooting, 3 on the East Coast, 4 on the West Coast, and 10 weeks of editing. And then we released it.
Cannon is now really challenging the majors as an independent, making strong films.
Yeah, they are. They're one of the most powerful independent groups in that they made their money on the street pictures, on the mass appeal pictures, but always, I think, with an overall vision to do important work, to do risk work, to bring something a bit classical to the movies. Now, they've done Championship Season, and they've also done Wicked Lady with Faye Dunaway. They're going to do Duet for One with Faye Dunaway, which is a good play. And they're doing, I believe, Sahara.
You mentioned the editing taking 10 weeks. Very fast period of post-production for the picture.
Absolutely. Well, they said, can you get it out before December 20th? I said, I think I can. And it was from the first day of roll, in camera, in action, to when the print was delivered here in New York, 2 days under 18 weeks.
Can we attribute that to the long gestation period?
Yeah, and you can attribute to an incredible cast. To my mind, a piece of American ensemble acting that comes along all too rarely. A fabulous piece of work by the actors. They played beautifully together. There was no, if one person decided to go on an ego trip or decided to play star, the delicate balance would have been tipped, and we probably still would be editing it. But they submitted themselves to the material, and indeed brought so much to the material in such a short period of time. A very intense period of time.
Robert Mitchum, Bruce Dern, Stacy Keach, Martin Sheen, Paul Sorvino. How did you shape this dream cast into an ensemble in such a short period of time?
Well, I think in a strange way the short period of time helped us. There wasn't time for self-indulgence. There wasn't time for too many questionings. You had to go right off your instincts. You had to trust one another and trust each other. I think sometimes when there's too much money and too much time around the film, you get into a kind of creative self-indulgence, which then becomes a destructive self-indulgence. There's too much second-guessing. I think during Championship Season was like 1 week or 2 week summer stock. You're truly doing Stanislavski then as an actor because you go right off your instincts. There's no time to sit down and have long, labored discussions on what the inner motivation is. You got to go with what you feel. And this is what they did. So in a strange way, that time period, I think, worked for us. In the editing period, almost the same principle applied.
How did the actors that played the former basketball stars react to working with an actor of the stature of Robert Mitchum?
Respectfully, but there was a kind of a healthy irreverence is what you need. You know, I was worried myself with the entire acting ensemble that because it won a Pulitzer Prize, there's a tendency to get very reverential toward the material. There's a tendency to genuflect before you say a line. And I encourage them to improvise to a degree. Create a design for an actor. I believe you've got to create a design for an actor. You can't let two actors go out there and say, do what you feel, do what you want, I'll just keep the camera here, because it makes them very insecure. And I placed a design on it, and I said, improvise within that, and we'll get back to the script. We'll get back to the script. We'll get back to the words. They're not written in stone. Get the emotional relationships. Get the subtext underneath it. I'm more pleased if we get that. The words will live in the play.
Any anecdotes you could tell us about Mitchum?
Well, he's from another school, and he played the coach. I believe him as a small-town coach. He didn't play it with. What I was terrified was, and I've seen this on stage, slipping into caricature and becoming histrionic and chewing up the scenery. He didn't do that. His natural inclination to underplaying, for me, worked. And he had a certain patrician distance. He didn't play one of those hale and hearty coaches, whack, let's go, boys, which I didn't want. I wanted a certain dignity and removal from him because he is from another age. And he's a joy. The crew loves him. Crews really love him. But you must, with him, come in with an idea and with a design, because he gets very skittish if you're sitting there and you, the director or the cameraman, doesn't know what they're doing, you know, if you sit around doing it. And it was wonderful because there's a little bit of pressure there, so it makes you come in with something specific. Might even be wrong, but at least attack it and evolve it and find out where it's going to go. I remember one time he did a very difficult scene, and he was, I think, very pleased by it in his own quiet, shy way, because he's a very shy man in many ways. And the crew applauded him, and he turned and he mooned the crew. He did. I mean, everyone was struck dumb, but he did. And then they broke up into big thunderous applause.
Stacy Keach and especially Bruce Dern in that championship season are really admirably restrained in their performances. I know that on film, the director has much, much more control of an actor's performance than on the stage. How does that relate to their performances in particular?
Well, you know, Bruce came to me and he said, please don't let me look bug-eyed. My career is in the toilet because everyone thinks I'm, you know, the great psychotic actor. I've done too many of them. And I made mistakes. He said, and I love this role, and I want to show that I have another dimension to people. And that's what I tried to do with him. There's a certain charm, there's a real charm to him, and there's a real adolescent charm. There's not that neurotic twist or that psychotic intensity that we usually associate with Bruce. He's vulnerable in the film, he's articulate, he's very funny in the film. And he wanted that. You know, and he said, shape me, watch me, make sure I don't step over into what I consider something detrimental to my career. And Stacy, to my mind, gives a magnificent performance in the most difficult role in the film. I mean, James has absolutely no audience appeal. He's almost a Cassius. And there's a kind of a desperate dignity that Stacy plays him with. And Stacy brought that to the role. I don't think, frankly, the role of all the roles that can be most caricatured. He can be the villain, the Iago of the piece. And he played it with a kind of a sad whimsicality and a 43-year-old tragic kind of whine. He's very pleased with the performance, and I am too.
Martin Sheen playing the real outsider of the group and the alcoholic. So many times in films, alcoholics are portrayed in a very stereotypical, wild, incoherent kind of a way, and his performance too was subtle.
Very subtle, and we talked about that, and of course Marty is a magnificent actor, and as he grows older he gets deeper and better. As a matter of fact, all of them do, I think. I think one of the beauties about this ensemble cast is that there are dedicated craftsmen whose work is growing all the time. I mean, they may do the rent movies or the alimony movies as many artists have to, but when they get something good, it brings out their finer qualities, the finest qualities that I think that they have. And Marty played an alcoholic the way I think an alcoholic should be played, not stumbling and falling down and throwing up and incoherent, as you say, or slurring. It's that kind of steady alcoholic, very, very steady, but trapped. And his wit never became vicious. His wit was a defense against what was going on. I mean, he was under the illusion he could leave that night. He had that illusion that I can get out of here anytime I want. I'm not like these people. I can leave. which of course he can't.
And of course, Paul Sorvino recreating his
Yeah.
Broadway role. What kind of challenges did he face, and how did you deal with them in terms of a role that he was so familiar with?
Well, that was it. There was too much familiarity, and at the beginning of rehearsal, we caught it. He was trying to, and he couldn't help it, but unconsciously, championship season as a play changed his life as it changed all our lives. And so when he first started our rehearsals, he tended, well, he didn't tend, he was giving the performance he gave 10 years ago. And we talked about it. We had a couple hours of discussion. And it was, in terms of intensity and just volume, was stage. So I said, Paul, just bring it down and bring it down. Just lower the flame. Just lower the flame. Lower the flame. Don't lose the fire, but just lower the flame. And I think he's real spectacular in the film.
Jason, how did your experience as an actor aid you in directing your first feature film?
Well, I understood their problems. You know, it's rare you have a film where 5 men are asked to be so vulnerable, to reveal so much. Because it really is, to me, underneath it all, with all the religious connotations to the film. The stained glass laid in here, and the trophy looking a bit like a chalice, and a little bit of liturgical music subliminally, and Mitchum looking like a bishop, or like the Monsignor. I understood, I tried to create an atmosphere where they would feel free to cry. You know, how many times in film do you see men cry? I mean, or truly laugh. I mean, rich laugh, not a stage laugh. So we stayed together a lot. We stayed together a lot as a group. And that chemistry is mysterious. I mean, I can't take full credit for it. You know, I was there and I guided it and I shaped it as best I could. When there were problems, I tried to solve them for the actor. And my tendency was, rather than go with camera, I'd go with the actor. I set up all the master shots, but I rarely, John Bailey was magnificent. He was extraordinary help. And I stayed as best I could with the actors and worked with their problems, which, as I say, was this extreme privacy that one had to make public for the camera and for the crew and for whoever was around.
As a director, how did you go about creating the environment in which these actors could gush forth with tears?
Okay. I would sit and I would talk to them, especially if Bruce had a heavy scene coming up, and we would rehearse it. I would clear the set, and we would rehearse it for an hour, hour and a half, until he felt freer and freer and freer, very much like you warm up an athlete. And I would talk to him and stroke him down, and we would design it, and then we would bring the camera crew in, we would rehearse it, then we would bring the crew in from Marks and still rehearse it, and then they would, Bruce would go away by himself or with the actor he was acting with, and they would rehearse it. And I cleared the set was always closed to everyone but the crew, which I think is very important, because I couldn't allow any kind of distractions at all. No friends, no agents, no nothing. It's just 5 actors and a crew. It was, in a sense, a group of men. There was maybe 2 women on the set. And I'd say, you know, counting the crew and everything, 75, 80 men. Paul Sorvino has his own way of warming up, and Marty has his own way. And I was very careful not to intrude on their private means of preparing. I mean, Paul would lock himself in his room. Bruce would take a bicycle and go around the lot. Stacy Keach would go in. He had an organ. Stacy had an organ, and he would go in there and he would just play this. He had a synthesizer, and he'd go in and he'd just play the synthesizer before his big scenes. And I just kept away. And then when they came out, the design was already there, and we either fulfilled that design or we extended in the performance.
Excuse me. Ira?
Yeah.
Can we cut?
Well, we're still rolling.
Okay. Sorry about that. Okay, Ira? Okay?
Yeah. Oh, who's ever coming up is coming up. So we'll see.
Okay, so continue? Okay, sorry about that. The reunion in that championship season seems almost like a wake for their lost youth.
It does come down to that, doesn't it? Yeah, it does. Well, I think underneath it all, it's about friendship, it's about love, it's about friendship, it's about betrayal. The key is about forgiveness, because that's about all we can do to one another is forgive. We're not going to change flawed humanity. I mean, we haven't changed in 5,000 years, really. I mean, technologically we have. But I mean, there's as much savagery with a briefcase as there is with a club. I mean, I have no, my feeling is the only thing that we can do that's really positive is forgive. Attempt to forgive. These men aren't going to change. It's not going to be any different tomorrow. I mean, they're going to go out and probably win that election anyway, by any means that they can. And I don't make moral judgments on them. I mean, I know a lot of audiences have, and perhaps some of the critics, but look, this is all we have. This is the humanity I see that we have. And except in rare instances can a man really change himself substantially. And it's not to me about Scranton or a basketball team, you know, or political corruption. I think it could take place in the boardroom of Columbia or AT&T, or those impulses that are driving these people aren't just selected to a basketball reunion in a small town. Scranton's a metaphor or an allegory, I think, for something larger, which I don't know what it is. I can't quite articulate.
There's an absence of women in their fraternal society, yet it's a woman who indirectly causes much of the dissension. Why was that?
Well, I think there's a lot of women in there. There's Paul's wife, who travels all over the country with her mother. There's the coach who was in love with a woman and couldn't bring her home because she was Protestant and his father was Catholic. His mother was Catholic. There was, of course, Bruce's wife. And there's Stacy's wife, 5 kids. There is an absence of love and passion in their lives, yes. And that love and that passion and that brief moment was contained in those last 7 seconds of their lives. Their fulfillment hasn't been family. Their needs have never been satisfied by being fathers or husbands. They're constantly drawn back to the past. And it is, in a sense, the power of nostalgia that may even give them the grace to go ahead the next day, to get up the next day and form a front against an enemy who was trying to oust George from office.
You grew up in Scranton, Pennsylvania. Can you describe the feelings you had in going back to Scranton to shoot that championship
Well, it's
season?
sad. There was a bit of a sadness because it's a beautiful town. It was a beautiful town, and it's struggling, and it's fighting back, but it's really in a death struggle. And it's not only Scranton. There are 200 cities of 150,000, those mid-cities, that are vanishing, that are disappearing to the malls, to the suburbs. The young are leaving. These towns look like senior citizens towns now, 60, 65, or very young. But the best and the brightest leave. And Scranton is not isolated in this. It's, as a matter of fact, I think it's an example of a real dilemma in this country. These towns, their central business districts are deserted. No movie houses down there, no life, no excitement. In the heart of the city is the central city. And it's gone. It's out at the malls. All the movie houses are out at the malls. All the businesses are out at the malls. And the towns are, as in, I tried to show in the film, when Marty takes that walk, you know, closed, deserted, for sale, great old pieces of architecture gone. And in some cases decaying, though I was not saying this is terminal at all. I didn't try to say this is, I think it's a mood, and that's what Bailey caught, I thought. We talked about the motif would be Hopper and a little bit of faded out Rockwell, but nothing so presumptuous to say that this is a disease that's incurable.
I know that Scranton welcomed you and your company with open arms.
Yes, they did. We couldn't, the film would not have been finished if it wasn't for Scranton. Could not have done it without the immense cooperation and help from Scranton. And I used at least 10 actors from Scranton, Scranton Public Theater, the smaller roles. And they were very good, and you know, the great faces, the ethnic mix in Scranton is unbelievable. Polish, Irish, Italian, Lebanese. It has it's like the League of Nations or something. And the California people were astounded by it. And there's a rare beauty to it, and it's very sad if it vanishes.
As an actor, you've worked with directors like Robert Mulligan on The Nickel Ride, William Friedkin, The Exorcist, Elia Kazan on The Last Tycoon. What did you learn from working with these directors that you were able to apply to your first feature, and what qualities do you think a director should possess?
Well, I think a director should possess, he should be articulate and specific. And I think, for me, that I've always wanted from a director, and quite frankly never got, is inspiration. You've got to inspire the actor. Enfold him and give him a sense of security so that he'll go as deep as he possibly can. And to do that, I think you have to be specific with him. You can't mince words. You have to know your material. And it seems to me that the best quality or talent of a director is to get the absolute best of everyone around you, from the dolly grip to the actors, and treat everyone as a creator. I mean, it's a collective, collaborative art. If you stay there with people I've worked with, an autocratic distance, then I have nothing to do with them. They won't get the best out of me, because I don't trust them then. I'll go to what's safe, what's secure, how I feel secure. But, and that's what I tried to do, you know, motivate, and inspire and shape. And listen to actors. The good actors can tell you a lot. The real good ones can tell you a lot. And it has been only my first time directing a film, and I was blessed with a rare cast. But I would hold those principles in a code of how I would direct, to create a line of communication that has no detours in terms of ego or who's the boss or this is the way it must be done. None of that. None of that. It's an actor does in public what most people do in private, and he must be surrounded by a creative atmosphere, an understanding atmosphere, a tolerant atmosphere, and then you get flights of genius.
You were very empathetic towards your actors. I'm curious as to what your relationship was in working with your director of photography, John Bailey.
Well, John was the painter, you know, and he's one, to my mind, he's the finest cameraman that I've ever worked with. Now, that is not a great, I mean, it's the only one I worked with, but I mean, I did work as an actor with Owen Roizman and Jordan Cronensworth. I worked with some good ones, and John is one of the most sensitive in the sense that, which combines an emotional response to material and a very, very intelligent approach to how it should be filmed. And he is highly respectful of actors, highly, highly respectful of actors. They never, ever had to gear their performance for the camera. When he came in and saw the rehearsal, which was another thing I demanded on myself, that I would clear the camera And when we finally got the design on the scene, then the camera would come in and film the impulses and the design created by myself and the actors. And John was brilliant in capturing that. Because you know, some directors of photography, suddenly you find yourself acting for the camera, not even for the actor across from you. And that never happened. Plus, he has a wonderful sense of light and color, and he's so fast.
What kind of homework did he do before shooting?
We went to Scranton, John and myself. Stayed there for 3 days. I showed him what I thought were the possible locations. We agreed on about 90% of them. And then, of course, he read the play, and he read the screenplay. And I think his immersion in Scranton for a weekend was invaluable. He came up from New York. He was shooting here.
On Without a Trace, I believe, wasn't it?
Yeah.
What were the adaptation problems that you faced in turning your play into a screenplay?
Well, I felt it, essentially, if there was a visual philosophy, it was about the passage of time, and how do I visualize that? The passage of time on buildings, the passage of time in light, the passage of time in the house, the passage of time on the faces, and men's reaction to that passage of time. You know, the fear and the terror and the desperation that can evoke in certain men, certain people. The sense of time's winged chariots at my back, as one of the poets said. I mean, they're, so I looked for things that were closed down, that once were alive. I looked for that coal breaker you see is the largest in the world, and now it's falling down. The railroad station closed. That huge school closed. The entire center of the town for rent. And so that's basically what I did. And then when I got into the house, I didn't want to do it in one room. I wanted, that house was another character to me. Well, you know, the lace curtains and the house. The house itself was passing. He was trying to hold it together, the coach, but it's those old, great Gothic Victorian homes. And you saw a great influence of his mother in there. And his father. But all that to me was a kind of the visual poetry of the film.
That would include some of the staging, for example, on the porch.
Yeah.
The interaction between what's going on in the house and in rooms within the house and what's going on in the porch, and then Sheen walking around outside, all of that.
You'd hear voices. Well, that's what I thought. I thought I'm not going to keep cutting to people. If I keep cutting to people, you know, first of all, I'll get into a pattern of cutting that will drive people crazy, and it'll become very distracting. And point of fact in life, you know, that's why I kept Marty inside. When they're outside and Marty keeps dropping these lines out through the window, you don't see him, though. And Stacy addresses himself through the window. To me, I thought that was one of the best pieces of staging in the show. Because if I kept cutting back into Marty, first of all, it would have been abrasive, and some of those lines would have been vicious. But this way, with Marty's, what I wanted was their reaction to what was said. And I do that a lot. It's slightly stylized, the film. It's not just bedrock reality. I mean, I open with a stylization, the flag, and I close with a stylization, going down for the photograph being... But in it, there's a slight... When they go into the gymnasium and they play that basketball game, he takes them in, there's a slight sense, a little bit of a crowd underneath there, subliminally, when they go through that last play, and there's a little... when it goes through the net. Some people hear it, some people don't. And the coach's voice sometimes coming out of the ruins while they're sitting, mixed with the music. And I tried to tie, the music is, Bill Conti did the music, and each man is an instrument. We use the idea of, I said, let's make each man an instrument and see what you can come up with. Like Stacy's a clarinet, George is an oboe, the coach is a trumpet, Marty is a piano, Paul is the cello, and the town of the woodwinds, high up, you know. And so that when you look also at the trophy and you look at the coach, there's a slight identification. You'll hear trumpets muted in the background. We've tried to put things in it like that, you know, give it that density that I think film can have.
You actually rebuilt the coach's house on a soundstage?
Yeah. Ward Preston, great piece of work. Yeah. Over in Zotero, California.
And your costume designer has worked with some of the greats, including John Ford.
Oh, yeah, Ron Tolsky, yeah, he's fabulous. And very, very subtle piece of costuming for 5 men's suits. They were beautiful, I thought. I mean, it tends you think, that's going to be easy. Well, it wasn't.
When you were growing up in Scranton, did you have an authority figure like Coach Delaney?
Well, we had priests, We had priests at that time and Monsignors. There was a guy named Father Mulholland and a priest named Father Egan who had that special sense of authority and endurance and strength. There was a few basketball coaches and a few football coaches, and I think the coach is a compilation based on probably 4 or 5 authority figures that I met, respected.
Would that hold true for the other characters in the film as well?
Well, a lot of those came from a lot of people in New York when I was struggling here as an actor. Because there is that sense of desperation, that sense of losing, that sense of perhaps slipping over the edge into oblivion, along with the town. I think that's why the play was very. I find that the play was very enjoyable. People enjoyed it when they walked out for some reason, and I think there was a slight caricature in the play. And then you come in the close-up with the camera. I think the film disturbs people more than it. I think I was talking to Barry Gray the other day, and he said he's been thinking about it for 2 weeks. He saw it 2 weeks ago, and perhaps it's one's age too that some of the lines strike a chord depending how old you are.
And I think your sex also has an effect on that.
Yeah, yeah.
What would you say was your most demanding role as an actor thus far? Nickel Ride. Probably my best piece of acting as well. Picture never made it, but probably. It seems to be one of those kind of neglected...
It's a cult kind of thing now. Plays down at the Thalia. Well, they lost it midway through. Somewhere it got lost. Mulligan lost it somewhere. The writer lost it somewhere. The studio lost it somewhere, but it has that kind of cultish feel to it.
On working on The Exorcist, you worked with William Friedkin, who's known as a very demanding actor. It's a very demanding director.
Yes.
What was Friedkin like to work for?
Well, he had good qualities. He had good inspirational qualities, and as a director, excellent technical qualities. But Bill let me go quite a bit, because I grew up in that Jesuit milieu. I knew what it was about more than he did, certainly as much as Blatty did. And I went down and lived with the Jesuits for about 3 weeks, 4 weeks before we filmed. I said Mass, and they taught me the rubrics, and I went down where all the dead Jesuits put all their old clothes, when they die. I said, what are the Jesuits, what are they doing with all those black suits when the Jesuits die? And they took me downstairs in this Georgetown cellar, and there were thousands of black suits and black coats and priest garb. So I went through there and picked out all my wardrobe, which I wore in film. And there were a lot of changes that I wanted to do in The Exorcist, and he let me. I changed the ending, going out the window. That wasn't in the screenplay. The relationship with my mother I worked on, and he worked on. Bill's very creative. I mean, when he's working with somebody creative, we changed quite a bit of it. Friedkin and myself.
That undertone of Catholicism in that film is also very disturbing.
And The Exorcist, yeah. Well, and the undertone of Catholicism in the championship season has been, commented on by, especially the interviewer from Sports, the review from Sports Illustrated was terrific. That's all he picked up. He felt the championship season was a religious story. I mean, he went to some kind of profound allegory. Now, I never thought about it that way, I'm saying, man, we got to get this done in 7 weeks. Don't worry about the allegory. That'll come later.
Does he point to things like the coach's house as a monastery?
And the trophy as a chalice, and the stained glass windows, and a little bit of liturgical music, and Mitchum saying that he was going to be a priest, and he got the boys Jesuits to teach them. Yeah.
Could you talk a little bit about the ethnicity of some of the dialogue?
With you mean what they call the racial slurs? Well, they're not racial slurs. I mean, everybody is Scranton. You say you're a Wop, and you're a Polak, and you're a dumb Irishman and you're a Jew and all. It's not codified. It's not. It's because it's so intermingled, Scranton. I mean, there's no place like it. The Italians. When I grew up, next door to me was Polish. I'm Irish, and next door to me is Italian. Down the block are Lebanese, and it's a way of defining territories. In point of fact, the intermarriage in Scranton now between Italians and Lebanese and Irish is phenomenal. So I don't take that seriously. That's just part of the surface texture of dialogue. It's no. And they're not bigots, you know. Here in this city here is, a lot of times here in New York, you know, New York is a big Toledo, you know, when you really start thinking about it. It's unbelievable. And these, I guess you would call them liberals, who are kind of silly people, you know. Smart and maybe articulate, but kind of silly. Right away they jump on it and say, oh, these men are bigoted and they're sleazy. And, you know, you're showing flawed people. If you want to show Burt Reynolds and Robert Redford, if you want to show some artificial perfection of humanity, fine. But these people are, I'm flawed, you're flawed, the world is flawed. I mean, we at least must admit that. And maybe movies today, it's only 50 years old, and so maybe today it is for escape. Maybe it's for the little green men, and maybe today we need it for escape and not for penetration and for introspection. Maybe now it's going to become the servant to great effects. Maybe technology will take over the movies rather than humanity. I don't know. You know, I think that what I try to do is use it to observe a human condition. That's all, without any kind of judgment. And but God, it's a judgmental world, I'll tell you. You know. And I love these men, you know, not because they're perfect by any means. I'd be a fool to think that. But they do overcome their flaws.
Jason,
they live with them. They don't overcome them.
Growing up, were your idols film stars, sports figures, religious figures? Well,
everybody. When I grew up, everybody was into James Dean. Everybody wore a red jacket, white jacket, and walked around and looked brooding, and, you know, and Spencer Tracy, I always liked, you know. Then James Dean, as I say, came along, and all of a sudden, you know, like 250 blue Mercs were roaring around Scranton, and Brando, of course. I liked a girl named Diane Varsi years ago, too. I thought she was an actress. I read a lot. I was always into Thomas Wolfe, the first, and what's his name? I liked Hemingway's short stories, and Salinger, Edith Wharton, Dickinson, Whitman. I had a very liberal education. Chekhov, Tennessee Williams, Arthur Miller, Cheever, people like that.
You mentioned Arthur Miller. Of course, you portrayed Miller in the Maryland TV movie.
Yeah.
What was that like, playing someone who was once, you know, your idol?
Well, there wasn't much of a role, you know. I mean, you know, when you're doing that, you wish. I've always wanted to play as an actor. Which I love, is After the Fall. I mean, here it got murdered, but it's a wonderful role to play, and I'd love to. And it is Arthur Miller, I mean, undoubtedly. I only had a piece of him to play, so I don't really have an opinion on that. It was a job, frankly.
What are you working on currently?
A bit of a play. But right now, I mean, really currently is, I've got 2 screenplays that I'm working on, and, but I'd like to go away for about 6 months now and finish this play if I get it done. And I don't know. I think I'd like to do a good acting role if a good one came along. Very hard though.
How do you feel now that that championship season has made that journey to the screen, and after such a long period of time?
Buoyant. You know, after a while, it was starting to become an albatross. And like everybody else, you wish you had 6 months to do it and 6 months to edit it. But when the time came, I took it and it's done. And I feel now I can get on to other work. It bothered me because it was being passed around in Hollywood and it was being abused. I don't like my material abused. It wasn't being respected. It was played with and monkeyed with, so that, you know, at times I can get, you know, I got into homicidal rages. And so this time it came by, and it's high tide before you know it, so I took it and did it, and I'm very happy I did.
Jason, thank you very much for being on the show.
Thank
Good
you.
luck with the film.
Thank you.
Okay. Mike's.
Can I get a few stills?
Yeah.
So I think we got a two-part show here.
Great.
That's good.
Thanks. Maybe if we can even get some more clips would be great if we
I'm going to see what I can.
Oh, terrific.
Can we just get one shot?
Sure, guys, come on in. Yeah, come on in here. Come on in here, Ira. You guys want to stand or?
Let's play the humble part.
Yeah.
Why don't you talk to him? Some accent.
I knew you would say that. Just before you said I knew you'd say it. Yeah.
What about the Dane curse? We didn't talk about
God, the Dane curse. How was that?
The Dane curse?
Yeah, I heard a little here.
Well, it didn't do too well on television. I know it's been on cable a lot now.
Didn't it play in Europe?
I became pretty good friends with Jim. And he, as a matter of fact, he's coming in here, I think, to do a movie. I think he's here. He's doing it next month.
Is he really?
I think so, yeah. Check Bobby, what the hell is his name? Bobby, his agent, the agency here. I'll find out for you. I'm pretty sure I read it, that he's coming in to do a movie here with, what the hell is her name? Randy?
Susan?
No, she's in
Did a
it.
film with her.
Maybe that's it. She did, well, that one with Stephen Collins and you know, Shirley MacLaine and all that.
Yeah. She's going to play off Broadway now, Susan.
One of the extremities, which I understand is very good.
Wasn't Dane curse released as a feature in Europe?
Yeah.
Yeah. The Private Eye.
Oh, really?
Well, it should be.
I think we got a two-part show.
It's very interesting.
Yeah, that was good.
Particularly interesting in your comments on directing and acting.
Well,
People, I don't think your average viewer is aware of, they think that the actors just say the lines as they old bugaboo.
yeah, the bad one.
So great.
Good. Good.
Step break it down.